I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, I really need your help. You've noticed the channel's momentum. Slowing down and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, it's free, and it allows us to keep bringing you compelling content. Your support means the world to us. Let's keep this channel thriving together. Thank you so much. Let's get into the story. Hey folks, I've been scrolling through posts here for a while, always thinking I'd never have a story of my own to share. But life has a way of blindsiding you, and I've been carrying this burden for months. I just need to get it out. Let me be clear. I've never been the type to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I had been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things felt solid, or so I believed. We navigated the usual ups and downs, but nothing ever made me think, uh-oh, we've got a real problem here. In fact, for most of our relationship, we were that couple totally in sync, true partners. We'd laugh at silly inside jokes, debate for hours over which movie to watch, and had a rhythm that just worked. She'd plan elaborate date nights, and I'd surprise her with her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless, like we'd cracked the code on love. That's why what happened next hit me like a freight train. The shift about 6 months ago, things started to change. At first, it was subtle. Details you'd probably miss if you weren't paying close attention. She began carrying her phone everywhere, even if she was just going to the kitchen or folding laundry. Before this, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she wouldn't care who picked it up. One day I even joked, "What are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and said, "No, work's just been emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But a few days later, she set a password on it. That caught me off guard because she'd never used one before. When I casually asked why, she gave some vague answer about security and hackers. I didn't push it. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but it just felt off, and it didn't stop there. She started taking calls outside the room, something she'd never done. It wasn't even subtle. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or out onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she'd just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit, keeping her phone face down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until I reached over to hand her something, and she quickly moved her phone out of the way. Yeah, it was one of those blink and do miss it moments, yet it stuck with me. Growing distance, but it wasn't all about the phone. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans like, "Where should we go for our anniversary? What do you think? We should start saving for a new car," she'd just nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before changing the subject. It all clicked for me on a random Wednesday. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. That didn't sound odd. She did that sometimes. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I thought, why not surprise her? It'll be cute. When I arrived, though, she wasn't with her friend. She was standing outside the cafe, pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. I stayed in my car because something about the way she was talking seemed serious. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but it didn't sound like work or a friend problem. It sounded bigger, like something she had planned. When she got home, I asked her how her coffee date went, trying to keep my tone casual. She spun a whole story about her friend complaining about her boyfriend. It was so unexpected that I just stared at her for a second. A few days later, she brought up something completely out of the blue. "You know," she shrugged, "I just think we should have everything in one place, like all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing. Just in case of an emergency." I wasn't sure what to say. This was a topic we'd never discussed, and the timing felt really strange given everything else I'd noticed. "What kind of emergencies?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She shrugged again. "It's just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to make a big financial decision quickly?" Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she said it made me uneasy. It felt too rehearsed, too polished, as if she'd been waiting for the right moment to bring it up. I nodded and mumbled something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea." But inside, alarms were blaring. Why now? Why were we suddenly worried about organizing our finances when we'd always kept them separate and pretty loose? That night, her words kept replaying in my mind. I tried to figure out what it meant. Was this just normal adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the conversation I'd overheard at the cafe, and how distant she'd been lately. It all started to add up, and I didn't like the picture it was painting. Up until then, I hadn't done anything about it. A few days later, she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was looking through her phone when she remarked, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I put down the knife and turned to face her. "Okay. What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up finances a lot lately." "Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her phone, surprised I'd pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she replied quickly, making me chuckle. "I just think it's important, that's all. You know, for emergencies. Emergencies like what?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, just life stuff. It's not a big deal, I promise. I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her response felt vague, too ambiguous. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided giving a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was hiding something, but I had no idea what. So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and found something unexpected. Over the last month, a few small transfers had occurred. Nothing huge, but minor amounts that didn't seem to have a clear purpose. They weren't for bills, groceries, or anything obvious. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it looked like she'd been moving money out of the account for some reason I couldn't pinpoint. I thought about confronting her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous, and if I was right, I needed to be careful. It was eating at me, so I reached out to someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd found, trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he said, "after I'd explained everything, I'm not saying something is definitely going on. But you're not crazy for wanting to be prepared. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now's the time to do it. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple steps to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit, taking such drastic action felt surreal. Felt like I was bracing for something terrible, even though I wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was starting to suspect she was, needed to protect myself. It wasn't an easy decision. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had built together. I kept replaying images in my head. Our wedding day, the late night talks about our dreams, the silly inside jokes we shared. How did we get here? Was this what our marriage had become? The thought of taking these measures felt like admitting defeat, like I was officially abandoning the trust we once shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and pulled out my laptop. My hand trembled as I opened the computer and started going through everything. Bank accounts, investment accounts, the property deed. Each document I reviewed felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't want to hurt her. I just couldn't shake the feeling that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, a crushing weight settled on my chest. I had trusted her completely for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. "I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while," I said. "It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case." She was silent for a minute, likely trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. "Are you okay?" "Ah!" Her voice was filled with concern. "Yeah," I lied. "It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about." She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she responded, "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you need." I hung up the phone with an odd mix of relief and shame. I hated involving her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some stability in an otherwise chaotic situation. By the time Em arrived home, I had already started the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, and even the house into my mother's name. I kept enough in our joint account to maintain appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice a thing. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I acted normal. But inside, I was a wreck. Part of me felt terrible, like I had betrayed her trust, but another part of me felt relieved, like I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my control. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want her to know anything had changed. She seemed content, even unusually cheerful at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it heightened my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she was doing an excellent job of concealing it. What stood out, though, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I'd questioned her the last time. It was as if the topic had vanished from her memory. At first, I thought I had overreacted, and she had simply dropped the subject because it wasn't important. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it, almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her looking at me a few times, as if she was gauging my mood or considering whether to say something. Every time I caught her, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was subtle, but it was there. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered important in the way she avoided. It suddenly seemed deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she wasn't diving in. If she was waiting for something, I wasn't about to give her the green light. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made sure everything was solid. I reviewed the paperwork again, double-checking every detail of the asset transfers to my mother. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm she had all the necessary papers. 2 weeks passed, and everything seemed normal, too normal, frankly. She was acting more affectionate, even starting to talk about random topics like work or what we should eat for dinner. It threw me off because she'd been aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me began to wonder if I had been overreacting all along. Maybe the strange behavior was just stress or something I didn't understand. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped instantly. Ow. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she said, her voice so calm it sounded rehearsed. It wasn't angry or emotional. It was just cold, as if she had told me we had run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond. As she explained her reasoning, she talked about needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different chord. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out. It was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault, and she was simply claiming what was rightfully hers. As I sat there trying to process what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything start to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A friend?" I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she said it wasn't casual. It sounded like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't just a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more skeptical I became. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifices? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to give her the life she wanted, and it wasn't just about money. When she wanted to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a longer commute. For me, when she wanted to attend that expensive yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I supported her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk, because I wanted her to be happy. I believed being a good husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she had mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling stuck in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurts so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She wasn't upset because of anything I did or didn't do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the friend she kept bringing up, or something else. But the woman sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite our marriage story to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her in that moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, like, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay, but I didn't care. My focus had already shifted. Needed to know who or what was behind her sudden, calculated shift in behavior. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something bigger, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it already had. After that conversation, she moved into her own apartment, and I received the divorce. Papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't just want to end the relationship. They were planning to take everything. Half the house, my savings, my assets, and the car. She wanted it all, plus some vague spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to just hand over everything I had worked for. At first I thought she was just being vengeful, but the way she articulated her demands, so specific and aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. Started with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I scrolled through her tagged photos and comments, looking for someone new. That's when I noticed the pattern. Jake repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't seem like much more than a 30-something. Marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before. On the very same day, I overheard her talking about starting fresh. My gut churned as I kept scrolling. More subtle signals. A comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this." And a selfie he'd taken from what looked like her new place. None of it was hard evidence, but it was enough to raise my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for answers to come to me. Her statement about a friend who helped her see things more clearly stuck with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to reach out to one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she'd know what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd spoken with my wife lately, or if anything seemed off. Lisa reacted quickly, saying she had no idea about the friend or any advice. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The whole situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid getting involved. Not willing to give up, I called another friend, Emily. I followed the same pattern, saying I was just trying to make sense of things. She was hesitant at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't get back to her. I assured her it wouldn't. And after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was heavily involved in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was clear this was more than just her needing space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was determined to find out why. I chose to confront it in my own way. That Saturday, I drove to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake walked out of the building. They weren't holding hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close leaning in to talk, was enough. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there staring at the spot where they had been. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. At that point, it was obvious. She hadn't just stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to leave with someone else. And now everything made sense. The sudden distancing, the money questions, the aggressive demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving me with nothing. And she had an accomplice the whole time. I went home that night, my head reeling with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was building with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt tense from the moment we walked in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick it looked like they were prosecuting a Fortune 500 company. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable. Half. The house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some nonsense about spousal support. I remained silent, pretending to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident demeanor quickly changed as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he asked, looking at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room fell completely silent. Her lawyer looked at her confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her expression shifting from disbelief to rage. "You planned this," she muttered, looking at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I didn't respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, visibly agitated, asked my counsel to elaborate, so he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence needed to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned perfectly, showing I had transferred everything well before. She filed. The signatures were properly notarized, and the trust was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she said, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you do something like this to me." I still didn't say anything. What was there to say? This wasn't about me doing something to her. This was about protecting myself, because she had made it clear she wasn't going quietly. The meeting ended with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. A mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she said, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you." That's the only regret I have. Things escalated faster than I had anticipated. Following the mediation session, she went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls. At first, she seemed calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that started with, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I didn't answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had built together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade, accusing me of being greedy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and I honestly didn't want to. I was done playing her games. But she wasn't. When the calls and texts didn't work, she started spreading stories. Mutual friends told me she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, that it was all part of a bigger farce, a prank. I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends started asking questions, like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't immediately buy the hoax explanation, she doubled down. She said it wasn't a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began portraying herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some people seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." Let's call him Matt. Matt and I weren't particularly close, but we had always been friendly. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, saying he had something I needed to see. When we met, he pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I asked, scanning through the messages. Matt explained that he and Jake shared a mutual buddy who had overheard their conversations. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake started gloating about how he was helping her secure her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling terrible about staying silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "Been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward?" Matt handed me the phone and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were damning. She wasn't just venting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her next steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. One message she sent read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need." "I just need him to agree to the terms," Jake responded. "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone, trying to comprehend what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding nor an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt, and he left, but my mind was racing. Everything made sense now. Her sudden isolation, her obsession with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The texts soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few friends, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly lost all credibility. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was almost immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly saw her for who she truly was, even her closest allies started to pull away. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal belongings. Her lawyer quietly dropped her case after realizing there was no legal ground to stand on. All of those bold demands had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust I had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things started to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she used me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning. But the moment it became clear she wasn't walking away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She wasn't accusing me anymore. She was begging. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this," one voicemail stated. Another, "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I didn't respond. I couldn't. It was too late to undo the damage. Even her family started to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one point, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. I didn't know what she was doing to you, he said. I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I kept the house, my savings, and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace of mind. My mother, as usual, was my rock. She showed up with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the space as mine. Now, life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction, no longer feeling betrayed, just peace. She is a chapter from my past that I no longer read, and the rest of the story is entirely up to me to write. Thank you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.